Hey, we're back. Hey, I'm John F. Gately. You can call me Jack, broadcasting to you from beautiful Plymouth, Massachusetts. You know, when I heard that People magazine picked some guy named John from Massachusetts to be sexiest man alive, I'm like, I'm right here. I didn't get my email, but yeah, I'm available. Right, right. And by the way, I lost a couple of pounds recently. I'm rocking this $8 Walmart t-shirt, one size smaller than normal. I'm like, here I am, People magazine. Here I am, Lord. But no, they sent the email to some other John from Massachusetts. So that's okay, because I think we're back. I think we are back. Here is pool tape from earlier today with Trump meeting Biden in the Oval. Look at that raging fire there. And Biden seems so happy. I think Trump told him that he can go back to his Jell-O after this meeting, but Trump seems pretty even-tempered, and Biden's got a big old smile on his face. And then, of course, once they allow for questions, the pool just totally misbehaves after that. I mean, they just screen questions. As you've seen, they do that for every president, and it's just like, this is how you conduct yourself as a professional. It's so completely, absolutely embarrassing, as you've heard Tucker Carlson say many, many, many times. So our show today, we're going to talk about Warren and inflation. She has a serious case of Trump derangement syndrome, probably because even though she won big last week. By the way, has John Deaton moved back to Rhode Island yet? I mean, he was renting a home in Swansea or something. He really doesn't have that far to go. But even though she won big last week, she now realizing she's in the minority. So we're going to talk about Trump derangement syndrome and Elizabeth Warren here in this episode. We're going to talk about massive government spending. Oh, which is actually what Elizabeth Warren's favoring. Inflation, but we're going to talk about massive government spending here in Massachusetts, because we're just about to spend $400 million picking winners and losers in our economy. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Brockton coming to its senses. The city of Brockton is banned outdoor camping. We're going to talk about that. And a think tank in Boston has just floated a bunch of new tax proposals, basically kind of like stealth-like, on behalf of Mayor Wu, which, of course, you've been watching the clips from WGBH on X. And a think tank in Boston has come up basically on her behalf and floated a bunch of new tax proposals. Thank you so much for being with us. By the way, I love your comments, and I'll try to get to those as often as I can. So this morning, if you didn't notice, but this morning, very important inflation numbers, and this is all going to tie into the Elizabeth Warren thing coming up. Very important inflation numbers came out this morning, and inflation is basically progress on lowering inflation, we should say, has stalled. So the Fed's target publicly is 2%, and we are currently stalled, depending upon what measure you want to use, either at 2.6 or 3.3. Let's just call it, amongst friends, we're basically stalled at 3% when you average those two numbers out. And understand what inflation is, or the 2% target. The 2% target is what the federal government thinks they can get away in stealing from you every year, and you won't complain all that much. If a dollar next year is actually worth 98 cents, you won't riot in the streets. If it's only worth 90 cents, then there's going to be some problems, right? People are going to lose elections. And remember, the job of the Fed is to keep those in power, whoever they are, in power. That's the job of the Fed. And when you look at, come on, computer, there you go. When you look at inflation, when you look at all of it for the last several years, remember, inflation is cumulative, and Elizabeth Warren loves inflation. I'm going to get to her in just a quick second. It's cumulative. So all that very high inflation, 7, 8, 9% that you paid back in 2022, that has still eroded your buying power even to this day. And when you look at all items on the Consumer Price Index, as reported this morning, annualized or year-over-year percent change, we're at 2.6. when you take out food and energy, because nobody pays for those, and this number is supposed to be have a little bit less noise in the number, I suppose. But when you take out food and energy, as we discussed, it's at 3.3%. Let's talk a little bit about what that means for you and inflation. And I've been telling you for quite some time that I'm really super concerned about next year, 2025. This calendar year felt more like 1988 than any year that I can remember since. 88 was okay economically. We had a lot of warning signs. We had the big stock market crash in the fall of 87. Some of you might remember that. But things moved much slower then. The changes were much slower. And then basically everyone kind of extended and pretended during the presidential campaign of 88. And then come January of 89, boom, hit the fan. And it wasn't pretty. And I kind of feeling that we're looking at the same type of pattern. And I think one of the things that we have to be incredibly worrisome about for next year is this chart going back up, right? We haven't met our goal. We made progress, remembering that, of course, the inflation is cumulative. So we made progress, but we haven't met our goal. And the Fed cut rates recently, probably going to cut rates again by a smaller amount this upcoming December. But we haven't made it where we need to make it, or at least where it's tolerable. So my favorite economist, by the way, points this out, Peter St. Onge, I think that's how you pronounce his name. Inflation jumps to 2.6, but the Fed's still cutting. They're handing Trump a mess. And I think that is true, that they probably would have handed anybody a mess. Now, how can you combat inflation? What drives inflation? Which Elizabeth Warren loves. Inflation can be combated basically by three things. One, a massive productivity in your overall society. So your society becoming massively more productive and wealthier. That's number one. Number two, you can look at the government debt and you can say that, oh boy, we have a lot of government debt. We need to, which is crippling, and it is crippling, becoming more and more crippling. It's becoming very, very dangerous. And the way you handle that problem is actually, with more inflation. You inflate away the debt, which is effectively a tax on the people, which is politically very unpopular. Or three, you can cut spending. Now, who has an idea to cut government spending, which would mean we could possibly get a hold of our inflation problem? Well, that would be Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, right? They are now in charge of the Department of Government Efficiency, says Trump, as of yesterday. And who has a real problem with this? Elizabeth Warren, because she loves inflation and she loves government spending even more. She loves it. The Office of Government Efficiency is off to a great start with the split in leadership. 2 people to do the work of 1 person. Elizabeth, let's be clear. Let me be clear, which is a classic Elizabeth Warrenism, right? Let me be clear. Elon Musk has got a lot to do. He's going to be a figurehead. He's probably not going to get paid. He's just going to set the tone along with Vivek. And then they're going to have probably like a small little troop of people, because if you make it too big, nothing gets done. That's paralyzing, as Elon Musk has demonstrated time and time again. And they're going to either direct and or influence Congress and the Trump presidency. So, I mean, this is just a little bit too smarmy. It's showing how insecure you are about what's coming next, because they are going after your massive government spending and you're showing your Trump derangement syndrome and your incredible insecurity about what's coming next, because you are effectively powerless in the United States Senate coming up soon. Up next for Trump derangement syndrome from Elizabeth Warren is this tweet from yesterday night or last night. Yesterday night? Is that a thing? Yesterday night? By the way, thank you so much for joining us today. Fox and Friends weekend host is not qualified to be the Secretary of Defense. Now, if you're not up to date, Fox and Friends weekend host Pete Hegseth, an Iraqi and Afghan army veteran, has been designated as the new Secretary of Defense. So we actually have a real-life veteran of recent war going to be leading the Department of Defense. Understand what the Secretary of Defense does. The Secretary of Defense sets the tone, and they almost always have almost always have a 2, 3, 4, somebody subsidiary to them, to carry out the mechanics of running the Department of Defense on a daily basis. You know, the filling out all the paperwork and triplicate and all that stuff. They have somebody to do that. He doesn't really need to know, all the abbreviations of every department of the Department of Defense. He has to set the tone, which is exactly what he's going to do. And this upsets Elizabeth Warren. Let's bring up Pete Hegseth. This is just from an interview last week.
There's a chance
this
to
is
course
the type
correct
of Secretary of Defense he's going to be.
Trump administration going after it really hard.
How would they correct it?
Well, first of all, you got to fire. You got to fire the chairman of Joint Chiefs, and you got to fire this. I mean, obviously, you're going to bring in a new Secretary of Defense, but any general that was involved, general, admiral, whatever that was involved in any of the DEI woke shit, it's got to go. Either you're in
any of the DEI woke shit has got to go
for war fighting, and that's it. That's the only litmus test we care about. You got to get DEI and CRT out of military academies, so you're not training young officers to be baptized in this type of thinking. And then, whatever the standards, whatever the combat standards were, say, in, 1995, let's just make those the standard.
This is very upsetting to Elizabeth Warren. If DEI is not a core value of the military, Liz is very upset.
And as far as recruiting, to hire the guy that, did Top Gun Maverick and create some real ads that motivate people to want to serve. And there's lots of other ways in which you could identify who.
I like that last ad. Hire the guy that did. Hire Tom Cruise, video editor, to do the ads for recruiting. Here's a great quote I thought from Dan Caldwell. I don't know, man, but it might be a good thing that defense lobbyists representing companies that fleece the taxpayers of billions of dollars don't know who the fuck Pete Hegseth is. This might be one of the greatest endorsements so far. One assessment was more blunt. This is a lift from Politico. Who the fuck is this guy? Said a defense industry lobbyist who was granted anonymity to offer candid views. The lobbyist said they had hoped for someone who actually has an extensive background in defense. I think Pete has boots on the ground. I think he knows more about our national defense, having actually toted a weapon on our behalf, than some bureaucrat that has made it through the 20, 30 years of Washingtonism, right? I'd much rather have some guy, I'd rather pick any frontline private to run the Department of Defense than some bureaucrat who somehow survived 20 years in the swamp in Washington, D.C. I'd pick anybody that's gone through book, not that I have, but I'd pick any of those guys, any of them, than some swamp creature from Washington, D.C. And Pete Hegseth is not some, fresh recruit. He served the country in a distinguished way, and he's made his career after the military one in which he celebrates the truth. And honors. This is a great pick, and he's going to. I eat my words. Maybe but it's the type of pick which I like because nobody in Washington likes it, including Elizabeth Warren. So good for Pete. I don't watch Fox much at all anymore, if ever, hardly, because they fired my favorite guy, Tucker. And I hardly have watched them for like the last year and a half or whatever. But certainly used to watch Fox and Friends all the time. And I wish him the absolute best as the defense secretary. And if Elizabeth Warren thinks he's bad, I'm thinking we're back. I think it's a good idea. All right. Any comments? No, not yet. All right. So when you talk about Elizabeth Warren as kind of the, how do I want to say this? The leader of Trump derangement syndrome here in Massachusetts, right? She is the leader of, hold on, get me a beer, like inauthenticity, Trump derangement. She's at the foreground of all the anti-Trump activities here in Massachusetts. And from that trickle down all sorts of really horrific pathologies that we have seen popping up. As Mark Halperin mentioned before the election, we're going to see one hell of a mental health meltdown if Trump wins. And we've had, especially here in Massachusetts, which we've covered on this channel multiple times. And one of them, most recently, was this story here. Let's see here. Bring it up here. Give me a quick second. Yeah, this story here out of Melrose.
Media Post.
This story in Melrose has to do with the election and veterans. Boston 25 News reporter Drew Caritas live with the story tonight. Drew, what can you tell us?
Rachel, the Instagram story was shared by a biology teacher here at Melrose High School. It wished a happy Veterans Day to any vet who didn't vote for Trump, and it didn't stop there. One parent we spoke with tonight believes he went way too far.
Why would you say that to anybody?
Eric Bush is referring to a social media post made by a teacher at his daughter's high school.
Look at what he says. Happy Veterans Day to any vet who didn't vote for Trump. Otherwise, I hope your Veterans Day is filled with tears and PTSD. This is a teacher in Melrose.
The Instagram story shared a Veterans Day tribute from All Elite Wrestling to those who served our country, but inserted a personal comment, quote, Happy Veterans Day to any vet who didn't vote for Trump. Otherwise, I hope your Veterans Day is filled with tears and PTSD.
Everyone's entitled to their views, but when it's hurtful.
You know, considering the suicide issue we have with veterans, how incredibly thoughtless this was.
Truly hurtful to people that, fought for this country and may have not come home.
Bush's daughter, who's a freshman at Melrose High School, brought the polarizing post to his attention. He says the biology teacher who did it is a class advisor for his daughter's grade and in charge of student government.
It's very, very much over the line. And anyone that approves of it, I think needs to look in the mirror.
A statement sent to us from Melrose's superintendent says, quote, at this time, we have no comment this relates to a staff investigation. We are not identifying the teacher.
Understand that this type of derangement syndrome is endorsed, at least tacitly, from our leaders like Elizabeth Warren. We also, last week, you remember this post from the Millbury school committee member? She said that Trump supporters should, quote, choke on a piece of shit-covered broken glass, if I have the quote correct. And you'll be happy to know that she's no longer serving on the Millbury school committee. She resigned. Millbury was split, by the way. They voted for Harris by 1 point, 49.5 to 48.5. So very close. Very, very close. She resigned in a one-sentence statement. It is great sadness that I submit my formal resignation to the Millbury School Committee. Well, actually, I'm not sad about it. I'm actually really happy you're gone, right? You should be gone. You should be shamed and embarrassed by that post. And I'm glad you're gone, your Millbury School Committee. But this is the type of pathology from the top, from Elizabeth Warren, from Maura Healey, from Mayor Wu, the three of them. It's like a triumvirate. They all endorse, either tacitly or explicitly, this type of hate against you. That's what they do. That's their thing. They encourage it. They support it. And then they turn around and, of course, they're always victims. In talking about excessive government spending, which is driving our inflation, and thank God we have Vivek and Elon that are now going to crack down on our government spending. Hopefully, we'll see how much Congress takes a liking to that. Because even when Republicans are in Congress, they don't necessarily cut spending, right? No, they don't. But hopefully, this is a new day. I'm going to stay positive, because certainly we have to stay positive on the federal level, even though it's way out of our control. And here in Massachusetts, because we are just about on the precipice of, I know this is going to be hard to believe, but they call it an economic development bill, but really what it's going to do are two things, and it's basically going to pick winners and losers in the economy. And we've learned from Soviet Russia, I think, that when the government picks winners and losers, they almost always get it wrong, right, Solyndra? And this new economic development bill includes $500 million for life sciences to be borrowed over 10 years, and $400 million for clean energy. So you're going to borrow. That's over a bill. That's $900 million. But let's just focus on the clean energy part. You're going to borrow $400 million to propagandize yourself in favor of clean energy over the next 10 years. Let me just ask you, why do these two industries, life sciences, which is basically biotech, and green energy, why does the government have to spend money on those things? Why aren't they investing, $400 million in Dunkin' Donuts over the next 10 years? Or $400 million in real estate brokers, right? Yeah, I'm worth it. Why send me some money, right? Why is the government picking winners and losers? Because it's part of a religion, especially when it comes to climate change. I hate it when people use climate as a whatever figure speech that is. But the new economic development bill is going to authorize, the compromise authorizes $400 million over the next decade to the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center for investments in climate tech in the offshore wind energy industry. $400 million in this. Do you think that those $400 million would be better, and the interest that we have to pay on it over 10 years would be better off? I'm just going to suggest that $400 million and the interest that we would pay on it would be better off in your pocket over those 10 years than in the offshore wind industry and the clean. And I think that you, as your average Mary Jane or Bob Schmo or whatever in Mass, I think you can spend that money more wisely yourself, and you can make a gazillion economic decisions about how you want to spend it or save it or whatever over 10 years. If you made those decisions yourself in the open and free marketplace, we'd all collectively be much better off than if the government sucked that money from us and then gave it to their friends and donors. I'm just saying, I think that would be a better choice. I think it would be better if it was in your pocket than if it was directed to Maura Healey's campaign donors and fellow religionists of climate change, right? The same thing goes for the life sciences thing. Oh, Jack, life sciences. Hey, if you want to be in the life sciences, you go get investors and get them to invest in your company in the private sector. Why do we as taxpayers have to give you our money so that you can be successful? If you were going to be successful, you would be successful on your own. On your own, right? When you look at where we're going in terms of the climate change issue, we did have a small little victory yesterday. Some of you might be aware that Massachusetts, California, and others are on track to ban the sale of electric vehicles come 2035. We just recently delayed, there was going to be a ban on heavy truck sales. That was going to go into effect on January 1st. That has now been pushed back to January 1st of 2026. Thank God. I have a family member in that business. He was very happy to hear it. And now Connecticut Governor Ned Lamont joins New Hampshire in abandoning electric vehicle mandates. And we might play the clip from Governor Lamont in just a moment. But effectively, the mandate that they were going to ban the sale of electric vehicles kind of definitely by 2020, by 2035, and they were kind of going to phase in this ban over years. That is going away, as Governor Lamont describes here in yesterday's quote here.
Of Tesla is a strong believer that EVs are a big part of our energy future. So there'll be a discussion. Whether I doubt it's mandates, but I think there may still be some incentives.
Are you going to try for it?
No.
That's off the table for you?
So the mandate in Connecticut, off the table. The mandate, which is basically a ban of of gasoline-powered engines, that ban of gasoline-powered engines is now off the table in New Hampshire.
I hope we got everything ready to go.
But we were following, the federal standards, and I think the federal standards are no more.
Yeah, you think so? Because Trump won. So here's another victory. I think, and we're back. Here's another victory. The ban on gas-powered vehicles is gone in New Hampshire, gone in Connecticut, and probably has its days count numbered here in Massachusetts. You might remember a couple of years ago that Charlie Baker was in a big push to have a wholesale energy tax across multiple states. This thing was called TCI, but basically it was a wholesale energy tax. And Connecticut's withdrawal from the TCI was kind of like the last stake in its death. It was the straw that broke the camel's back. And hopefully, if Connecticut backs out of this and New Hampshire backs out of this, because when my Bronco right now is 3 years old, I got 50,000 miles. I'd like it to go another 10 years. That might be kind of like on the high side, but I definitely would be in a market for a vehicle in the early 2030s, right? And I want to buy a gas car because I love gas. And the more that you make me buy an electric vehicle is the more I want. I'm like a teenager. If you tell me I can't have it, I want it more. And because I want a gas vehicle, and I want that's why I'm going to stretch the life out of this Bronco as far as because I love gas vehicles, and I even more love the fact that you hate them. So if I can go to Connecticut or New Hampshire and go buy a gas vehicle and bring it back into Massachusetts, are you going to be able to stop me? Really? If I buy a gas vehicle in New Hampshire, are you going to put some type of excise tax on it that makes it so difficult? Because if you do types of things like that, guess what? I will eventually, I'll move to New Hampshire where I can go buy my own car, right? And exactly. And so will tens of thousands of other people. So this was good news. And thank you, Mass Fiscal, for reporting on it and for posting that quote. But here, unfortunately, the grift continues. By the way, if you've never been to the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center website, this is where all the government money is flowing to basically Maura Healey's donors. Hold on a second. Hold on a quick second. Trying to do everything at once. That's better. Okay. This is where all of the money from the bond bill, the $400 million over 10 years, would go. And this is where it's going now. Notice how splashy this website is, isn't it? It's just so awesome. And where does the money that they have now go? Well, for instance, if you drive for a living in Massachusetts, there's just been a new additional $6,500 EV credit. They are so desperate for you to buy EVs, which suck because you can't drive them for that. You know all the things. You know the thing. That you can get one of those new Ride Clean Massachusetts $6,500 credit to buy an EV if you work for Uber and Lyft. That's above any other credits. They're basically underwriting the EV industry with your tax dollars. You can get it from the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center. And soon, the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center, over the next 10 years, is going to have another $400 million to give away from you for boondoggles like a $6,500 credit for an electric vehicle. Or under this story here, and here's your application progress at Ride Clean Massachusetts. You wonder how little nonprofits get grants to make e-bike rentals cheap? Yeah, you guessed it. They get it from the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center, which is highlighted somewhere in this article here. These people in Cambridge have now made renting an e-bike almost free. And who pays for it? You do, through the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center, which is now going to have another $400 million to give away. Right? Lovely, huh? All right, so let's see if we have any questions here. You know, as you know, I produce this show completely by myself, and occasionally I do get an interruption, and that was it. All right, we have a question from Jason. If it's got the V6 Penstar, good luck. No, the Bronco that I have, I did pay extra for the 2.7 twin turbo. I would rather have the I'd rather have like a 3.0 without the turbos, but they don't sell it, at least the model year that I was buying it. So I did upgrade. They sell the Bronco, believe it or not, with the 2.3 twin turbo, which I thought was ridiculous. So I did spend the extra for the 2.7 twin turbo. I might get an EV, but I only drive 4,500 miles a year. Well, obviously, yeah. I'm not saying that there's not the right place for it, but most people, it makes no sense for. Most people, it makes no sense for, like none. But if you're only 4,500 miles a year, okay, yeah, knock yourself out. Yeah, you're probably not going very far either. I'm guessing, you're going, you're like no offense, Jason, but if you're only driving 4,500 miles a year, you kind of sound like a little old lady that goes to the grocery store and goes to church on Sunday. I don't want to offend you because I know you're one of my most loyal followers, so I'm having a good time with you. But I hope. But yeah, you get out a little bit more. You got to get out some more, man. All right, Brockton. Brockton has come to its senses. Let's take a look at
in
Fox
Brockton,
25.
city leaders cracking down on the homeless. One more box to sign off before fines kick in. Boston 25 News reporter Christine McCarthy picks up the story.
It is unjust, it is unacceptable, it is cruel, and it is morally wrong.
That's the state representative, I'm pretty sure. It's unjust and cruel. Here's the problem with all of the things. When you talk about people that are homeless in the United States, almost all of them are not homeless because of economic situation. almost all of them, almost down to the very last one, are homeless because of drug addiction or alcohol addiction.
More than a dozen held signs at Brockton City Hall Tuesday night, taking a stand against a law that would target homeless encampments and loitering.
You cannot kick someone on their teeth when they already been down.
The ordinances would set fines of $200 a day for camping on public property and $50 a day for loitering. Councilor Susan Nicastro says the local shelter is near or at capacity as the winter approaches, and she can't support charging a fee someone won't be able to pay.
They need help and support. They don't need to go to.
All right. So I don't know if you get this, but people like this city councilor here, are killing these people with their compassion. They're killing these people with their compassion. What we absolutely positively need is basically three things. We need a camping ban. Yes, absolutely. Way to go, City Council in Brockton. You voted 7-4 for the camping ban. Nice job, even though your state representative was against it. State Representative Dubois was against it. You need a camping ban. 2, you need, in some cases, mandatory treatment. And 3, which, again, this last thing the lefties are horrified by, you actually need to enforce the drug laws. That means anybody that's dealing or using in public on the sidewalk, as I've covered on this channel many, many times, you need to enforce those laws. But, of course, all sorts of lefties, like this lady here, all sorts of lefties would also say that enforcing the drug laws is cruel. But their policies of excessive compassion is far crueler. When you look at the outcome for homeless folks and you look at the homeless industrial complex, it's not working. It's not working. Let's go back to what she says.
Jail. This feels really wrong to me.
Other opponents say the law would only move the.
How do the businesses and the people who live in Brockton that want to live in a safe place, does it feel wrong to them? I don't think so.
Homeless farther from the health care and services they need to survive.
I was an addict for 20 years. I ended up on the streets of Brockton. I ended up in Tent City. They ended up closing it down years ago. So I know what it's like to disperse the homeless and what happens. A lot of people end up dead.
But city councilor and sponsor Jeff Thompson argues his ordinance is not criminalizing homelessness, but protecting public safety.
Unfortunately, sometimes the people who occupy these encampments are intoxicated. They have mental illness. So, they present threats to our citizens. Some of our citizens have been accosted, have been verbally abused.
Councilor Phil Griffin says residents and business owners are begging the city for help.
Quality of life is really being adversely affected by the people.
You'll also remember that the city of Fall River made a similar statement in September. How is it that these working class places like Fall River and Brockton are taking these positions that are against the far left? Maybe because they actually have to live with the consequences of policies that are dreamed up by politicians that live in Acton or Cambridge. Right, Elizabeth Warren?
Openly defecating on the street, using drugs openly on our streets.
In 2 votes of 7-4 and 9-2, the ordinance is passed and will now head to the mayor's office.
We cannot have encampments on our sidewalks, under our bridges, in the areas that our children walk to go to school.
Everyone I spoke to acknowledges that there is a big homelessness problem in Brockton, but many say that they need more support. It's not just on the city of Brockton to solve this. They want to see more money and resources from the state and federal government. On scene in Brockton, Christine McCarthy for your local.
How about before we send more money, how about City of Brockton, you enforce the law? If there's a homeless camp, almost every single homeless camp that I've ever been to, if you ask around, there is always a drug dealer, if not multiple drug dealers, servicing that homeless camp. Remember that guy that I interviewed that was on the crutches in Fall River like a month or 2 ago, right? I asked him, I don't know if I asked him on camera, but I asked him off camera, is there somebody that comes down here and, meets the need for the narcotics? And he was like, oh, yeah, absolutely. How about you do the other thing, which if you can't do the mandatory treatment, because that might require additional resources, but how about you at least do the law enforcement thing, because there's already laws in the books against open drug dealing and open drug use, and there's already laws against that. How about you go do that before you start to look for more money? And of course, every time you bring this topic up, there is always the homeless industrial complex, which is totally against it. You scroll down the bottom of this article here from Mass Live, the opposition from frontline workers, and it's a frontline worker or a few that they're always against doing something different, because doing something different threatens their grant money. Doing something different might indicate that what they're currently doing isn't working. It's just a miniature version of the swamp in Washington, D.C. To bring it back to Pete Hegseth, right? They don't want anybody different in charge of the Pentagon, because he might allocate resources differently than current swamp creatures, right? It's the same thing that the lobbyists said, that maybe it's a good idea that the people don't know who Pete Hegseth is. Maybe that's a good idea. Same thing here. If you change how things are done, there's a whole homeless industrial complex, to infer Eisenhower's famous phrase. There's a whole homelessness industrial complex that is threatened. And that's why they don't want anything to change, because they might be revealed as frauds. The Boston Municipal Research Bureau, which is basically led by Marty Waltz, a former state representative who once ran Planned Parenthood for a couple of years. She quit as a state representative in 2013 to run Planned Parenthood for about 2 years, if I'm not mistaken. So she's that's who she is. You know who she is. And the board is filled with the elites of Boston. You know the ones. And this fiscal watchdog group, what a lie that is. They have come out. Fiscal watchdog group. That is the funniest thing I've read in this whole live stream. This fiscal watchdog group has come out with a list of potential taxes. A list of potential taxes that Mayor Wu could put into place, that she could consider. I don't know about you, Wu, but maybe you could consider cutting your budget, which you just grew 8% year over year. Maybe if you're in a fiscal crisis, you could consider cutting your budget. Just a thought. But instead, she has the watchdog. What a joke. Boston Municipal Research Bureau come up with this report. And it took me a while, but here we go. Here are the taxes that they're floating on behalf of Wu. A local sales tax, like other major cities, except not here in Massachusetts. A local income tax, like they have in Washington, D.C., I think. In addition to the state. So just so that they could attract more people to move to Boston, we'd have state, federal, and then a local income tax, and maybe a local sales tax. Other options could include fees on parking, charging residents who have a resident parking sticker, imposing a commercial parking tax. The city could also impose, wait for it, a sugary drink tax on soda. Oh, where's Mayor Bloomberg when you need him, right? Other beverages added with sugars, a local tax on alcohol and tobacco, a tax on tickets for professional sports games and concerts, the report states. So not only are you going to tax the players, the millionaire tax applies to the players. That's why all the teams are losing, right? Now we're going to tax you who go to the games. Perfect. Right? I did go to a Bruins game. Where's my Bruins hats? Back here. I did go to a Bruins game recently, but actually, yeah. So it was great. I had a really nice time. But can you imagine paying a ticket on top of that, a tax on top of that to go to the Bruins game or the Celtics game or the Red Sox game? Just a little something, just a little something for Mayor Wu to wet her beak, because she wants to grow her budget another 8% year over year. I mean, that's why the deal to increase commercial property taxes was not really a deal, because the business sector got nothing for it. They got nothing. They got a tax increase and they got nothing in return. No fiscal discipline and no other concession like, cut red tape or anything else like that. Cut all the climate mandate. No, it was not a deal. It was just basically we asked for X amount, but now we're just going to raise it just a little bit less than X. That wasn't really a deal. You got nothing. And you liked it. All right, let's see if we have any more comments. None. Okay, Jason's not mad at me, even though I told him that he got to get out more often. I'm John F. Gately. You can call me Jack, broadcasting to you from Plymouth. Have a great day. We'll keep you posted. Bye-bye.